Hey, howdy YouTubes. It's Nigga Big Steve here back. And I decided that I'm gonna get back into the old Spawn comics, Todd McFarlane was my dude from back in the 90s. Really probably as a single creator, the most inspirational creator that I know. And at the back of the Spawn comic, he wrote his why. Why is he doing what he did? Why create this comic? Why Image? Well, here's his answer. This is a question that will be asked 100 times over the next few months. The answer will be as varied as the creative people involved in this somewhat historical undertaking. Though I wouldn't profess to speak for any other creator, I can give you some insight as to why I stand with Image. The entire reason that I am here, doing what I am, can be summed up in one word: respect, or more appropriately, the lack of it. Traditionally, comic companies have been the moving force in this industry. They had the name, financial backing, creative pool, and characters. Because of this combination, it was almost suicidal to ply your trade outside of the company boundaries. This fear started in the 30s. As time went by and options became fewer, the creative pool became more convinced that we couldn't survive without the big corporation backing us. Luckily, there were a few shining lights along the way. The biggest of them for me was Jack Kirby. I was born in '61 and was too young to be there when Mr. Kirby seemed to be electrifying the industry with his literally thousands of creations. By the time I started collecting at age 17, his legend had grown to almost mythical proportions. Here was a man who had created, co-created, or at least had a hand in the conception of nearly every character I had ever heard of. In almost any other occupation, a person of his esteem would command respect from both the people he worked for and from those who follow his work. Unfortunately, as far as I could tell, this wasn't true. By the mid-70s, I had heard and read about some of the struggles Mr. Kirby had endured. It was this rude awakening that was always in the back of my mind during my entire career working for Marvel and DC Comics. I mean, if Jack Kirby could be shuffled to the sideline and generally ignored, what chance did I have? The answer is none. Armed with this reality, I kept a close eye on the further advancements of the comic industry as a whole. New companies seemed to spring up at the time of the 70s, such as Eclipse, Pacific, and First. All of them had their time in the sun, and all of them ran into a few obstacles too. One of the things they accomplished for the creators was offer a choice, offer ownership, and more importantly, offer the acknowledgement that we mattered. People such as Kirby, Mike Grell, Frank Brunner, Jan and Dean Mulaney, and a host of other talented people paved the way for much needed change in the industry. It is these people, along with others such as Steve Ditko, Don Heck, and Kurt Swan, who put in years of service with Marvel and DC, to whom I owe a debt of gratitude. Their work affords me the luxury of having creative control and a royalty payment on my work, and it is my hope to acknowledge that what they did mattered to me. Sadly, I do not think that Marvel and DC feel the same way. They insist that their characters are always more important in the creative process than the creators. Almost all of us would probably agree that the characters are very important, but not at the expense of forgetting those whose visions led to the popularity of these characters. Somewhere along the process, the companies seem to have lost sight of what actual human flesh created every one of these characters that they now own. I think they will find that rarely do the companies make mention of the people who initially created the characters. I'm not looking for them to go out of their way to give the life history of the creator. However, I've read 10-page articles with information on characters given by the companies without ever a mention of the creator. As the years went by, my heroes turned into the likes of Alan Moore, Frank Miller, John Byrne, and George Perez. I got more enjoyment from these four people than I thought I would at an age when comic books are usually the furthest thing from a young man's mind. But again, I stood by and watched as one by one they built up enormous popularity and readership for the companies that changed the rules halfway through the ball game. Suddenly, The company had all the answers as to why the books were selling, with no credit to the creative team that brought the books to the attention of the public. None of these four men are currently working full-time for the Big Two. All the things that seem to be an attribute to someone such as Frank Miller. In the beginning of his career, his passions, his visions, his opinions, and his convictions turned out to be the things that companies couldn't deal with, or were actually negative factors as the process continued. If he wanted to change the look and feel of a bad-selling book 10 years ago, why didn't those same things count 8 years later? What it amounts to, when a book isn't selling, it doesn't matter what you do on it. And when the book is a success, new ideas are squelched, and suddenly a status quo with a bag full of rules is attached to it. Mentally, I wasn't willing to accept these conditions any longer. Whether that is a lack of character on my part or seeing that there were other options available is irrelevant. I made my decision. I thank Marvel and DC Comics for giving me the opportunity to provide for my family with a living and a large forum to expose my talent, but the fun had gone out of it for me. It didn't matter that they were paying good money. My mind was wandering. In most other occupations, the foreman will ask the workers how to improve their working conditions. That has never happened in comics. And why should it, when the creators didn't count as much as the characters? I can honestly say that in the 6 or so years I've been in this business, other than Jim Salkrup, no one at the office ever solicited my opinion on anything. Not that I had any great vision, but given that I had experienced some success, it seemed reasonable that they might wanted to tap into some of my ideas. What I am trying to say is, why wouldn't comic companies ask Ditko in 1963 why he thought his books sold, and Kirby in 64, Buscema in 65, Starlin in 72, Byrne in 75, Claremont 78, Miller in 82, Moore in 85, etc., etc. Every year, heck, every few months, there's a new hot guy. Why not tap into those people? Because as far as the companies are concerned, it really doesn't matter what we think. Am I being a bit harsh on these companies? Probably. Were there not any good times? Thousands of them. Then why wouldn't I turn my cheek a few more times? To tell you the truth, it would have been far easier to stick with Spider-Man, collect a big check, fly to conventions, and act like a big shot. Instead, I am turning my back on a sure thing for some, perhaps, unattainable goal. My wife and I have a new daughter, and I know that because I am following my heart, I will be a better husband and father. No amount of money could buy me that. Also, I like to present a nice atmosphere that I work in to my daughter so that she isn't turned off by the whole comic process. Someday, I hope that she will be proud of me instead of thinking that I'm getting the shaft. Now is the time for me to sink or swim. No one to blame but myself. The future has never excited me more. I can draw cool characters, monsters, silent issues, wordy issues. As a matter of fact, no issues if I don't want to. And better than all that, I don't have to answer to anyone. Sound egotistical? Call it what you will. Doing what I want, when I want, where I want, I call it exciting as hell. In the future, I hope to do a Spawn Spider crossover, an Image Comics team up with Dark Horse, DC, Marvel, Tundra, Valiant, or whomever. Different characters, different companies, different creators. The list, it's almost endless. I'm excited at the possibilities, and I hope that you are too. It's time for us in the business to all play together and not divide the ranks. We at Image are not out to burn anyone, quite the opposite. Given that we feel so excited about our work, it should show through on the printed page. With people working at different companies, such as Liefeld, Lee, Silvestri, Larson, Portaccio, Valentino, Claremont, Miller, Moore, Simonson, Cowan, Barron, Gaiman, Ramita, Ray Fogel, Gerber, Layton, Perez, Grell, and on and on and on, topped off by the king himself, Jack Kirby. We now have the potential to have all of us playing the same playground with the same rules. 1. Don't screw your neighbor. And 2. Turn out the best damn comics that have ever been on the stands. You out there now have the most important job. Let us, the creators, and the companies know what you want, and hopefully we'll be able to pull off a few of them. In closing, let me leave you with a thought. If someone gave you something that helped you grow in your life, would you thank them for their concern or figure that you would have done it eventually? I'd let them know they helped. That's good. That's honest. That's respect. Todd McFarlane. This is written in 1992. Todd McFarlane is Comicscape.